All right. We are getting ready to talk Penn State football on the Our Lads Football Network for the OFN today. I'm Greg DePalma, and we have spoken Penn State football once already this season, and we are bringing back the same analyst, the same guest analyst from PennLive.com covering Penn State Nittany Lions football. It's Dustin Hockensmith. Dustin, thanks for doing this.
Hey, yeah, absolutely. I think since the last time to now, you have a little bit more pep in your step on that intro. So
You like that? Yeah.
whoever's in your ear about it, I applaud them.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of excited because we've got a lot of new that we're gearing towards on the channel,
Oh,
and because
nice.
we're branching out to. We have one channel right now, and we should have like 5 in the next few weeks. So
Nice.
it's an exciting
Oh, wow.
time. Yes.
Yeah.
And yeah. So just as an exciting time as it is for Penn State fans. What a big game coming up this week against Ohio State. Of course, it's a road game, so but that's okay because based on their recent history with Ohio State, they seem to play sometimes better on the road than they do at home.
Well, I mean, home or away, they've always found themselves in games in the fourth quarter.
They have.
And Penn State's going to find themselves in a game in the fourth quarter again, one way or the other. So whether that's at home or on the road, I mean, I think in this series with this matchup, I feel like home is a big deal.
Yeah, let's go over because when we talked towards the beginning of the season, the big talk was about Alar, the quarterback, and whether or not he would have the goods, and he hasn't yet been tested to this point. This will be his test. McCord had his test, and for about 50 minutes he was failing, but got a passing grade. At the end because they won the game and he led the game-winning touchdown drive. There's still a lot to learn though about the young quarterback for Ohio State. We'll find out as well on Saturday. But what's your take on your gut feeling on how Drew Alar will play?
I love his talent, and I think he's delivered through 6 games. At worst, I think maybe some B- performances. But I think his B- performances were both on the road, Illinois and Northwestern. There are obviously some ways to compare and contrast that. But, to me, in those 2 games, he didn't quite look like his confident, believer in himself, with the mechanics that were sharp and he didn't have to think about it. There was some hesitation. There was some ways where he wasn't his most confident self.
Okay.
And so, to contrast that, I think Ohio State's the kind of opponent that he's not going to have a lot of time to think about that one way or the other. So I think Drew can rise to this challenge. He's got 2 road games so far. Both of them were noon starts as well, Eastern time, that he can lean on and grow from. But, he's doing this to go around. It's against a really, really good defense. So he's got the talent. He's got the mental goods. I think it's a matter of when, not if, that he really has that quote unquote breakthrough performance, that national acclaim performance. It could very well be this game, but in a number of ways, I am in I got to see it before I believe it phase with Penn State in this matchup.
Yeah, and by the way, and I know we talked about it before. Is it Aller? Yeah. Aller. Yeah. I want to get that right.
Yeah.
So is coach still getting it wrong too?
The name will be known. What's that?
Is the coach still getting it wrong too?
I don't think I've heard him say it on film.
Okay.
Since the last time.
Yeah.
But he did.
Yeah,
he did.
Yeah. So we all get it wrong.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you know what? This will be the game where everybody can get it right. So
he's gonna be a household name sooner than later. Because I'm a believer in his ability to process where things went wrong and become better for them. Like I'm a believer in that part of him too. So he's going to put it all together and he's going to make some big throws, and maybe Ohio State, he was at his best, I think, when teams were trying to pressure him. When West Virginia was trying to pressure him, when things kind of break down and he's escaping the pocket or moving up in the pocket, that's where he does some of his best work. So it's like some of these defenses that just drop back and just loaded guys within 10 or 15 yards of scrimmage and didn't send extra bodies. That was a different kind of challenge for him, where he was taking a lot of checkdowns and things that you ask a young quarterback to do. He did, but he hasn't really had a lot of opportunities since the season opener to really unleash that arm of his.
Yeah, it's interesting. As you mentioned, the 2 road games were 2 of his worst games. He was 54% against Northwestern. He was only 48% at Illinois. And those aren't exactly 2 big or quality Big Ten teams this year. But on the flip side, you want to look at the positive, the glass is half full. You mentioned West Virginia, and of course, there's the Iowa game. Those were the 2 best teams he's played. And he had a 67% completion percentage against Iowa with 4 touchdowns and 3 touchdown passes against West Virginia and a 72% completion percentage. So that, to me, that means more to me than home, away, and especially the Iowa game. And let's also keep in mind, no interceptions to this point.
Right.
He's going to turn the ball over eventually, with an interception. When he does, it'll be interesting to see how he responds. But that's got to be, that's really impressive. And he also has 3 touchdowns on the ground. So, I know he's kind of he's kind of an outsider as far as a Heisman contender, but he can certainly make a case for that if he has like a coming out party.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, you look at where Penn State ranks statistically with the pass, and it's not high. Like he's not being asked to put up video game numbers that you see in parts of the country. So there's that. But like if this kid, if you fast forward, so he's got 12 touchdowns and no interceptions. If you look at the end of the year and it's like 27-3 or something like that, and they've beaten Ohio State or they've beaten Michigan or they've beaten both of them. I mean, crazier things have happened than for him to jump into that. He's probably at this point, if he's going to play his way into that conversation, he's probably Penn State's best candidate for it.
Yes.
A lot of really good defensive players, but you don't really have somebody who's jumping out to the point where it's going to be in the Heisman conversation. The running backs have been good, but they haven't carried the way either. So if something happens in the second half of the season and they change their approach and Drew is being asked to do more and they take more deep, all that stuff, crazier things have happened. I would say that for sure.
Well, here's the thing, and I'm going to be doing a college football show, my show a little bit later on, and I always put up bargains, futures bargains, Heisman bargains, and he's definitely going to be on my list this week because of the fact he's 50-1 to win the Heisman right now. And again, if he has that type of game, that's the difference between the video game numbers types of players that you'll get votes for. But then there's also those moments that you just capture. And if he leads a touchdown drive that is directly resulted in him making big plays at the end of the game to beat Ohio State on the road, that 50-1 number drops to probably 10-1 on Monday. That's how significant that. And they'll take a real look at him, and they won't mind that he doesn't have the video numbers of the video game numbers of some of the other guys. So that's all up to him. Look, he's a young quarterback, as we know. We're not trying to put too much pressure on him, but this team, and we talked about at the beginning of the season, and that's why I picked him to win this conference. So this is a game that I'm expecting them to, I'm saying I'm picking them to win, but I also feel that if they lose the game, they still have a very good chance to end up a national championship team because it's still all in front of them. If they lose, they could still beat Michigan, put themselves in a position. Now, I don't know how it all work out. I guess top-ranked team, is that how it works out in the Big Ten if they all beat each other?
Yeah, and there's a pretty good possibility that we're looking at that tiebreaker criteria down the line. The odds of one team, Ohio State, Michigan, or Penn State, getting through that the other two unscathed. I'm not really believing that. Yeah, this year I just don't know if I believe that. Michigan goes on the road to Penn State.
Yep.
They'll be faced with trying to beat Ohio State for a third straight time. They've got a great team there. Jim Harbaugh's got a team that buys into what he does, but also has a lot of NFL guys everywhere. So Penn State, Ohio State, these teams are there's a good chance they beat each other up.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but whoever wins the game today gets the heads up. They're the one that takes that early lead. Puts the pressure off of them. Hey, you know what? We win today. Yes, we could lose still. put ourselves in, we could still at least put ourselves in a position that we need to in order to possibly, of course. And unfortunately, they're all in the same division, and I don't know
Right.
yet because it changes, it seems to me, every month about what they're doing with the conference next year. Is it going to be one big conference? Are they going to have divisions? What's the deal with the schedule? So we'll talk more. We have more than enough time to talk about that in the future, but it just shows you how tough it is for these three teams to be in the same division. I'm sure they're going to do
Yeah.
something to change that, but they have to get through it this year. So let's talk about some of the other things and some of the other players. Offensively, Nicholas Singleton. A lot was expected out of Nicholas. This was going to be a big year for him, a big opportunity for Penn State, because especially we know that they're more of look, they've had good quarterbacks in the past, good receivers and all that. But when you think of Penn State, you do think of the line of scrimmage, offense, defense, linebackers, and running backs. That's what I think when I think of Penn State. But Singleton has not had the season at this point that has wowed anybody. Like he's nowhere near going to be a Heisman contender at this point unless he rushes for 250 yards on Saturday. Why is that? Is it just because that's the game plan? Allen's played well, so they're just kind of rotating both guys, no pressure to play one over the other. But this is a game that maybe Singleton is going to be asked to do more than we've seen him so far.
Well, I mean, Singleton's name is in the crosshairs if for only one real factor, that they're not breaking any big runs. That is a continued storyline, not breaking any big runs. I think, statistically, if you were to compare this season to last season, the missing ingredient of having those 40, 60, 80-yard runs is the difference between his rushing average and his rushing numbers. Now, I think he's grinding yards away as well as he was last year. Just for whatever reason, the big one has not been there. And I think there's probably Penn State's offensive line has been better on a pass blocking front than a run blocking front. So that's part of it.
Okay.
Teams are really camped out near the line of scrimmage. So there's that part of it too.
Okay.
I think Penn State has steered into this persona of being a 3-4 yard grind at a time, kind of offense, ball control. They're second nationally in time of possession. They're definitely believers that their defense is a winning unit.
Oh yeah.
So when you believe your defense is not only just like a good unit, but a winning unit, you do tend to, maybe, especially with a rookie quarterback, put it that way, a rookie starter. They're steering into, let's not make beating ourselves is the worst possible thing we can do. So they're kind of insistent on not beating themselves, but I think you have to. They're in this process now of trying to intersperse the big plays you're ultimately going to need. The odds that you're going to be able to march 14 plays for 80 yards on Ohio State and Michigan is not the same as Northwestern and Illinois and those teams. So the formula can remain the formula, but you're going to have to at certain points break a big run, make a big play down the field, make big throws, whatever. Drew Aller against Iowa, that's one of the games you brought up earlier. He was absolutely automatic. No matter where he was thrown on the field, he was automatic delivering it with accuracy. That it could be on the sidelines. It could be the whole way across the field. He's got the arm strength to take free yards anywhere that they are. And that was why they moved so efficiently against Iowa, where they didn't as much against Northwestern and Illinois. So if he's throwing the ball like that formula can work, because you're making third down throws that move the chain. So I think you're going to see some of that, but you're going to have to ask Aller or Singleton or Allen. The tight ends are in the process of emerging now. Okay. So I think maybe those are names to know. Theo Johnson, who we brought up the last time you and I talked, had 2 touchdowns last week. That was sort of a coming out party for him. So that's another dynamic to watch here. How the big play happens. Watch the tight ends down the seam. They would love to get Nick Singleton on the edge and try to beat somebody to the edge.
Okay.
If you're playing an aggressive defense, you have more of a chance to get guys out of position. So maybe Ohio State, in being aggressive, allows Singleton the opportunity to break free.
Yeah, because you mentioned Johnson. So Lambert Smith, he's been the only big producer for the receiving unit. And we talked about Johnson and maybe even Dante Cephas transferring over. So is there a receiver, Johnson will be one of them, but is there someone else that you think, because I don't think this is a surprise. We see this in college football every season. There's maybe someone at midseason or towards the end of the season. It just pops out, and maybe it's just because he was young and needed time to develop, whatever the case may be. Is there a player in this unit, in the passing game, if you had to single out one guy other than Lambert Smith or Theo Johnson, who would that be that could maybe surprise and be a big part of the game on Saturday?
Well, he'll be a surprise because he missed a pretty good chunk of the season so far. But Trey Wallace is probably their highest upside wide receiver. He caught, I think it was 8 passes in week 1 against West Virginia.
Okay.
Missed large portions and or whole games since then. But last week came back out of the bye. And they were really targeting him in some plays that make you think that he's your best game breaker. So we don't really know for sure what Trey Wallace is or who Trey Wallace is at this point.
Is that his nickname, by the way?
Harrison Wallace III. Trey
so he
Wallace,
likes to be called Trey. Okay.
Yes. Yep. So I think his emergence is something to watch as well.
Okay.
Like,
That's
I think if,
one.
Lambert Smith, obviously he does a great job, especially, on slants and things like that, taking it to the house. But I think in terms of air distance traveled, Trey Wallace is probably your best, most dynamic threat. And they haven't had him for a lot of the season.
That's a good one. All right. Defensively, though, we have to, before we wrap up, and talk about their defense, because this is really what is dictating this football team this season. And that is what really, if they're going to win a national championship, win a Big Ten championship, it is going to be more likely because of the defense. So what's making this defense at this point in time so dominant?
Well, I mean, I think from a mentality perspective, I think they all buy into the scheme. They all buy into the job that everybody on defense has, which is flying to the ball. So the more in sync you are and the more effort that you put forth collectively, the better your defense usually is. I mean, you see a lot of talented defenses that don't have that fly to the ball mentality and they underachieve, where I think Penn State has an abundance of talent. NFL talent. Like I made the case that there's probably a half a dozen guys on this defense who will go in the 3rd or 4th round or higher in the NFL draft at some point in the next 1, 2, 3 years. So there's like actual pedigree here on defense, and they go deep at corner. So Johnny Dixon is a veteran. He's in the 3rd year of the program. He's their number 2 corner. He's risen to the challenge. He's got a great cornerback mindset. Kalen King will be going head-to-head with Marvin Harrison Jr.
Oh, yeah.
You hope that they, as a defense, they hope that they can hold him to less than $185, which is what he had last year. So they have the corners to kind of match up with one of Ohio State's strengths at wide receiver. And then they've just got, not only, they're just long, athletic, fast. So every guy on the defense is at least one of those attributes. So they have that premium talent. They get to the quarterback without sending extra bodies. They're creative when they do send extra bodies. They've got great linebacker play that's diverse, different skills there. I mean, there's all the ingredients you could possibly want, including, having 3 edge rushers going deep that way. It's all there to be not only a suffocating unit that makes the field feel small, but also one that can take the ball away.
Yeah, because let's see, Isaac. So he's leading the team in sacks. We talked about Chop Robinson.
Yep.
Curtis Jacobs. He is, and Abdul Carter. So those are the 2 top linebackers, correct? And yep. Jacobs, is he the top linebacker, Jacobs?
Well, I mean, I think Abdul Carter as a freshman, he was a freshman All-American last year. He's the one that got talked about the most.
Okay.
He's bigger. He plays more downhill. He tends to make more splash plays than Curtis Jacobs does. Okay. So there's that. But I think Jacobs, in terms of being the headier, more experienced veteran, is definitely in that mid-round NFL conversation as well.
Yeah,
but
sure.
they're 2 different guys. Okay. Carter is more likely to take somebody's head off than I think Jacobs is, though.
Well, you need them all. So
you do.
It sounds like they have it all. And yes, look, Ohio State's not running the football that effectively, and you wouldn't think that it's going to start happening against Penn State. So you mentioned, of course, King against Harrison. Overall, because there's more than just Harrison. That's what makes Ohio State's receiving unit so special. So you do believe that they have the depth in that secondary to hold up?
I do. I mean, Johnny Dixon is a really experienced, talented guy. Again, probably a mid-round NFL draft pick, if I'm guessing. Kalen King's a likely first-rounder. Daquan Hardy, who had 2 punt return touchdowns last week, explosive, and he's been playing that nickel slot position forever, and he has looked outstanding. He missed the first couple games. He has looked outstanding there too. So their nickel corner is really good. Their safeties are kind of emerging. So that'll be interesting in the deep middle part of the field. If Penn State safeties can make the plays needed back there, that'll be fun to watch. But they do have the defensive backs, the talent, as well as you can to match up with all that talent that Ohio State has out there.
And look, I mean, these are the matchups you dream of as if you're a scout. Especially, look, everybody knows how good Harrison is. This is a real big opportunity for King. Because like you said,
Sure.
I mean, if Harrison goes out there and has 95 yards and a touchdown, hey, it's okay. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, but you just obviously you can't have 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah. That ain't going to work. But you do believe King is going to shadow Harrison? There's going to be one-on-one. Is that how they play defense, or do they play sides?
I mean, they'll typically kind of play sides, but I think you'll see most often King will shadow Harrison. Awesome. I think they want that. You know, I think both sides probably want that. I think Harrison wants that. I think King wants it. I think the Penn State coaches want it.
Yeah.
I don't know how bad Ohio State's coaches necessarily want it, but I think they believe in their guy. Penn State believes in their guy. And we'll see what happens with them.
All right. Now, before I close, just some interesting trends in this matchup. So Penn State has lost 6 out of the last 7, but they've covered 6 of the last 7. Right now, the spread is about 4 points, give or take a sports book. And Penn State on the year, not only 6-0, but they've covered all 5 of their games. Ohio State 3-1-1. Against the spread, of course, winning all of their games. And I'll throw in one more. This is a little bit more, this is a real deep trend. Penn State is 14-0-1 against the spread following back-to-back straight up and against the spread wins when they're taking on a conference opponent. I don't think that's all too crazy. So basically what it's saying is when they come in hot, dismantling a couple of teams back-to-back, and then they take on a conference opponent, 14-0-1 against the spread in their last 15 in that matchup. That bodes well. Even though it's a short number, I think every point is going to matter in this type of game because we would expect a defensive game. I mean, I don't do totals, but if I was thinking totals, I'd probably have to say I don't think this is going to get into the 40s. That's just my impression.
There's a good chance of that. You know, I think a lot of that depends on. So if Ohio State turns one-dimensional on offense, if they're not able to if Trevion Henderson, I don't know what his status is at this point in time, but if they don't get a representative running game in there, and Kyle McCord becomes a one-dimensional, it becomes known, or they struggle to stay on schedule, it's not going to be great for Ohio State. I think that's probably the worst thing that they can do on either side of the ball in this matchup is allow themselves to be behind the sticks for long periods of time. I know they can block. I know they got guys who can run, but Penn State is really disruptive. And when you're on third and long consistently against them, it's going to be tough. I think both offenses, there's a good chance that it's really a punt fest kind of thing. So I do tend to think that going under is a strong possibility in this one.
Dustin, right now, as of today, we're recording this on Thursday. Who do you like?
I know why you're saying that. I gave you inside intel before we started saying that I was believing in Penn State early in the week, but as the week went on and some of this heavier stuff started to weigh on me, I'm going with Ohio State. Penn State to cover within 4 because I think every point is going to matter, as you said. I think field goal difference either way, it seems like a pretty likely outcome to me. And the reason I go Ohio State is I know it's different rosters and different coaching staffs and all that, but Penn State has been in games over and over and over again on the road, at home, in the fourth quarter against Ohio State.
And they can't finish
Ohio State has been the one that makes the play.
Yes, they have.
And so, it's a new year, new team, but every year it's been a new year, new team, and that trend kind of persists. The other thing is, beating a top 10 team. James Franklin has been a stronghold here for over a decade, and it hasn't happened very often, especially on the road. So there's that. And then Aller, his performance on the road, if he needs to be sharper than he was against Illinois or Northwestern, all three of those things are things that I want to see before I believe. That's where I ultimately land. Like on paper, I see it. I think Penn State looks better on film than Ohio State does too. But the home field advantage with those three bigger trends, it was hard for me to make that leap of faith. But I don't blame anybody who does.
Yeah, history in college football matters a lot. I see what you're saying, no question. And I'm not surprised that you did it, that you felt that exact way, because the initial impression is like what you just said. Yeah, initial impression. I'm not going to go into anything, what I've seen this year. Yeah, okay. But then you start thinking about it, you think about the history, and then, so yeah. But let's remember this, and this is the important thing. At this point in time, neither one of these young quarterbacks have been in this spot before, and that, I think, favors Penn State, because there ain't going to be no C.J. Stroud walking out on the field, or one of those guys. Now, maybe McCord could become that guy, but he's nowhere near that level of quarterback. And they don't have that type of quarterback running game combo that we've seen to make those explosive plays and just go bang against Penn State. And before you know it, it's a 2-touchdown deficit. So yeah, that's the reason why I'm still, when I look back, even when I start digging back into it, I'm like, yeah, but the only thing that I doubt actually is what we talked about at the beginning, is with, it's going to be so tough to go undefeated. So if you think of that, the logical way of thinking is you go home. You go, Penn State wins at home against Michigan. Ohio State beats Penn State at home. And then you go that route, and then you get where everybody's got one loss, and then, who. So I get it. But again, I'm sticking with Penn State. I think it's their year. And because of that, I think they take care of business on Saturday. So we'll see.
I see the scenario. I see a lot of scenarios. And I would say, just kind of final thought, if you look at the quarterbacks head to head, I think Drew Aller is a much better bet to have a breakthrough performance in a game like this than Kyle McCord. And that's both with his talent and what he's kind of shown so far. And I think with Kyle McCord is going against the better defense, if we're looking at it that way.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll see. Every program needs a breakthrough. See, for me, if I'm like looking at it from, say, a Rutgers point of view, being from New Jersey, a breakthrough is just winning a game against, whoever, or getting into the top 20 again, or that's a breakthrough. But a Penn State breakthrough at this point with James Franklin, that's winning a game like this. That's going to the Big Ten championship game when you've got two other top 10 caliber teams in your division. So, yeah, I think they're overdue for a breakthrough as well. And we'll see if I'm sure the fans are starving for that breakthrough. I know how that feels, again, on a much different level. So we'll see if Penn State gets it done. And then, of course, I look forward to talking to you at some point later in the season, maybe Michigan week. And I want to remind everybody, you have the Keystone Network podcast. We'll have a link in the description for that. And also the Penn Live podcast.
Yeah, I'm actually in about 90 seconds. I'm going to go record that Penn Live podcast. So yeah, check that out. Blue White Breakdown, it's called.
Appreciate it, Dustin. We'll talk to you again later on in the season.
All right. Thanks, Greg.